40 years ago, a book came out called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. It was written by a rabbi named Harold Kushner. It was a sensation because Kushner wrestled with a primary existential question in an approachable way. He was motivated to write the book because his 14-year-old son, Aaron, had died of an incurable genetic illness. When I was in seminary, I took a class in theodicy. Theodicy is essentially an effort to reconcile the power and goodness of God with the presence of evil in the human experience. In other words, why do bad things happen to good people? Why does an all-loving, all-powerful God allow terrible things to happen? Kushner concluded that God's power was not infinite, that it was limited, that God actually could not prevent suffering. My class presented many different reasons for why there is evil. None of them, for any of the students, was a final answer. In our passage for today, Jesus seems outraged by the people, those who follow him, and those who are simply stopping in's interpretation of why people suffer. Do you think that because these Galileans suffered in this way, they are worse sinners than all the other Galileans? No, I tell you. Or those 18 who were killed when the Tower of Siloam fell on them? Do you think that they were worse offenders than all the others living in Jerusalem? No, I tell you. The prevailing belief of that time was that bad things happened to to good people, because they were bad. They had done something wrong, and thus God was punishing them. We see this view clearly portrayed in Job. Job is a good and upright man, and yet he's sitting on a dung heap with giant sores that dogs are licking. He has lost all his children, his riches, his health. And the people who come to him keep saying, "You've done something wrong. You've sinned. You're being punished as a sinner." And he's saying, "No, I haven't. I want God to come and explain to me what's going on." And God does eventually, and basically says, human beings cannot understand. There is justice in the world, but it cannot be had without mystery. Back then, lepers were shunned, cripples avoided, the poor disdained, because the understanding was that they were secret sinners. God was punishing them. So the Tower of Siloam fell on 18 because those 18 deserved punishment. I wish we could dismiss this as old-fashioned, ridiculous thinking. But I meet so many people, and I see in myself the tendency every day to turn life into a function table, an in-out machine. When we are faced with a teenager struggling with depression, a couple tragically divorced, a person who dies young, we work very hard and very quickly to explain it. Oh, well, he had this problem since he was little. Oh, she lost that job and never got over it. Oh, he was always stressed, overworked, overweight. It's so rare that we admit to ourselves our complete confusion. So rare to hear people say, "We have no idea why this person died of COVID and this person didn't." There is so much mystery, and all we can do, Jesus tells us, is have faith. We have to believe not so much that God caused it for a reason, but that God is there, endlessly generating love and compassion and hope and helping us to rebuild. Jesus is correcting his followers. He is saying, you have no idea why those Galileans died. You have no idea why those people succumbed to the tower. God's ways are incomprehensible, and they don't involve God sitting up in a mechanical room deciding to make towers fall on people. Jesus was radical. Blessed are the poor, the leper, the vulnerable. God is not punishing these people. God has unique and special love for them. But God is looking to see that we bear fruit. God is forgiving. Jesus is our advocate in the garden. He says, give them more time, supply more manure and water. But God is looking for us to bear fruit. So Jesus chides the people for their simplicity and for their judgment. He is railing against our eagerness to make suffering easily understood and our tendency to judge other people and make their suffering their fault. But he is also, it seems to me, he is also warning them and us. Our God is a God of mystery. His ways, the ways, cannot be understood. But we, the followers of Jesus, we are expected to show up for this world, to bear fruit. In the first reading today, in the book of Exodus, Moses is watching his sheep, and suddenly God is speaking to him from a burning bush. Suddenly God is announcing his plan for the great nation of Israel, and Moses to be its leader and liberator. And Moses says in the most human and understandable way, "Who should I say is giving this order? What should the people call you?" And God speaks through the burning bush and says, best translated, "I am who I will be. Everything that is, everything that will be, it is God." God is being, the ground of being, as Paul Tillich says, the very essence, beginning, empowerment of everything that is and was and is to come. When God calls to Moses, Moses replies, "Here I am." We hear this statement, "Here I am," repeated again and again in the Old Testament. From Moses, from Abraham, from Samuel, "I am here." The Hebrew word is hinene. It's more than a simple indication of being physically present in a location. It is an existential expression. I'm not only here, but I'm here. Spiritually, I'm all in. I'm prepared to reflect on who I am, on what's important to me, and how I can affect change for others. When Moses says hineni, he means even without knowing, I'm all in. Without an understanding, I am here. I am showing up for a life of faith. And that's the contradiction to our function box thinking, our mathematical search for what's the rule. There is no rule. It's mystery. But I am here. As many of you know, Paul Farmer died recently. He was a doctor who started Partners in Health and traveled around the world convincing people that health care was a right, not a privilege, and that the poorest of the poor deserved all the best medical attention. When he entered international medicine, there was a lot of math being done, a lot of calculation about the worth of spending $5,000 on a Haitian man or a Russian prisoner dying of, say, TB, when the odds of them completing treatment were so low. Farmer convinced people that it was worth it, and he hired local people to ensure that treatment routines were followed. He thus empowered a whole other tier of people, patients and community workers. Tracy Kidder wrote a book about Paul Farmer called Mountains Beyond Mountains. But to me, he's simply one of those people who said, "Here I am," in a genuine way. To me, he was a modern-day saint, a reminder that there are still those around us who give everything, bearing fruit, believing, "Here I am, hineni." Perhaps we cannot all be Paul Farmer, but it's still Lent. There's still time to take on a new practice, to take time for our relationship with God, to listen for how we might best bear fruit in this world. Part of the way we can show up is to pray, and part of the way we can pray is simply to listen. Yesterday in the Times, Margaret Rankel wrote about how we need to take the burgeoning spring as a time to pay attention. The world is burning, and there's no time to put down the water buckets. For just an hour, put down the buckets anyway. Take your cue from the bluebirds, who have no faith in the future, but who build the future nevertheless, leaf by leaf, straw by straw, shaping them and turning them into a sheltering roundness, perfectly fitted to the contours of the future they are making. Turn your face up to the sky. Listen. The world is shivering into possibility. The world is reminding us that this is what the world does best. New life, rebirth, the greenness that rises out of ashes. Finally, a way we can show up for God is to experience joy and share that joy with others. She writes, "We are creatures built for joy. At the very saddest funerals, we can hear a funny story about our lost beloved, and God help us, we laugh. We can stagger out of an appointment where a person in a white coat has given us news we think we cannot bear, and still we smile at the baby in the checkout line, clapping her chubby hands at the balloons by the register, or kicking her feet in joy at a stranger's smile. This is who we are, the very best of who we are. Take that prayer and that joy and spin of it a life song. Serve our God. Show up for God. Hineni. Amen.